Oh no.
Landed Korean freeze.
That's why I'm like, I
Alright, welcome to Monday, 30 October, year of our Lord 2023. What's good news? Any good news? How many girls were at practice? Say about 20.
Saturday there was 5.
What?
Friday there was like 8.
I thought we had double digits.
Oh, we have 12.
12 total?
Guess how many kids the Badger boys basketball team had come out? Freshmen through seniors.
Talked about this.
I haven't heard. Gotta be it's probably a low number since you're saying that.
8,
9.
Wow.
Did they have a lot of seniors last year?
They really started out. So,
Who's, Duncan Moy graduate?
No, Moy's still there. It's everyone's
I
mad
can
at
get
Moy.
these folk one of.
That's why they're not playing?
Yeah.
Because of Upshire?
No, Moy, because apparently
Oh.
he gets all the attention.
Oh, I hate Upshire. I hate that dude.
So that is according to YSN announcer, Lisbon should only have about
Who's not
7
playing?
players.
Who's not playing the Flowers kid?
No, it's
I heard we had like 30.
Russ Thomas playing.
How many boys we got? 30?
32 maybe?
Flowers and Ross
It's actually really good for your hair.
Yeah, they're both playing. Actually, I don't think Flowers. It's Russ Thomas.
Alright, here we go. Everybody enjoying the liquid sunshine outside? You like that, Chuck? Emma, do you remember what the next worldview is? Closely related to secularism. Marxism. Why do we say, alright gentlemen, lock in. Why do we say Marxism is closely related to secularism? Before we put it up there, give me some words that you think might be words used to describe Marxism, if it's closely related to secularism.
Materialism.
Materialist. Atheist. Yep. Both of these worldviews are very close to 180 degrees from our Christian biblical worldview. Marxism. Karl Marx is a contemporary, by the way, of whom? Who else was very influential beginning in the middle of the 1800s, and 160 years later we're still feeling the effects of this person's influence? We talked about him last chapter because of biology. Who's so Darwin? Darwin and Marx. Both of these guys are products of the, what was that period of time? Enlightenment. Definitely not the Reformation. Some confusion on the text. People putting it down. Karl Marx.
We're getting your test back.
I just put.
Today?
I mean, if you grade
I
it.
got most. Atheistic, materialistic worldview. Okay.
I thought the grades already had to be in.
Out.
No, not till Tuesday at 12 o'clock.
How do you know, Brett?
Because I'm him.
Abolition of private property. Somewhere along the line, because I know I've mentioned them several times in your high school career, you've learned about this guy named John Locke, who was an influential philosopher in the founding of America. And that's where we got the phrase, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. John Locke's idea in England was, freedom means you have a right to life, liberty, and property. Property. Property is a means to where we can have the happy life. We can have our little lot that we can say is ours. Kind of the American dream, if you've ever heard that phrase before, right? The American dream is that you live this life of liberty, independence, and part of it is you have your piece of property. To the Marxist, They want to abolish the idea of private property. To the Marxists, most of the ills that come along in society are the result of individuals owning property instead of those properties being owned by the public. By now, you should be thoroughly, you should thoroughly know the difference between public and private. Public is something that's owned by the community, the public, in other words, the state. Private is you own your own stuff. So, to the Marxist, private property is no good. Public ownership is the way to go, because our goal is achieving communist utopia. And if you look at the word communist, and the root of it is commune, or communal, or community, there's going to be a little bit of confusion, maybe, as we go through this, because, and I'm going to ask you to think about, is that so bad? We've said from the beginning, when we go through these other worldviews, there's going to be aspects of them, and you're going to be sitting there thinking, well, that doesn't seem bad. Why is that a bad thing? Is it bad, for instance, if their goal is this communist utopia, is it bad to kind of want to build as perfect a life as possible while we're here? Again, in the here and now, the idea of Marxism and secularism having so much in common, because they're both concerned with the material world, because that's all there is. They're concerned with the here and now. Where does Marxism maybe diverge from secularism? Secularism is more concerned with philosophically or academically changing your mind, getting you out of this religious mindset to get you to see that, hey, if we all use our human ingenuity and rationalism and empiricism, we can achieve the best possible life in the here and now. And that's where our resources should be geared towards. The Marxist says kind of the same thing, except everything's based on what subject in school starts with E? Economics. Economics. Everything to the Marxist comes down to economics. In a society where we promote the ownership of private property, that means someone's going to own it, which means someone else doesn't, and the people that own the property, whether it's land, house, factories, machines, someone that owns it means someone else doesn't. And here's a phrase for you. It's not in the notes, but maybe put it in the margin. A communist, a socialist, a Marxist, and we'll differentiate between those three words because they're very similar. We use them synonymously a lot. They have this idea of life that it's a zero-sum game. Do you ever hear of that phrase before? Zero-sum, like when you learned integers, plus 2 plus 2 plus negative 2 is 0, right? So if I gain, that means someone else must have lost, because the sum is always going to be 0 to them. In economics class last year, at some point, I probably drew a circle on the board and said that they see the world as, here's the world's wealth as one large pie, and we all deserve, gentlemen, we all deserve our fair share of all the world's wealth. It isn't fair that some people, and this is where you get the idea of the 1%ers, it isn't fair that such a small percentage of people own so much of the wealth in this country or even in the world. That is inherently not fair. Let me ask you this. What else did we learn in economics last year? In order for democracy or our Republican form of government to work, what class do most people, in order to achieve stability, what class do we hope most people feel like they're in? Middle class, right? The Marxist idea is, if you don't put brakes on people, their pursuit of, this is a bad word, profit, will feed the natural inclination people have towards greed, right? And that, if you don't put any brakes or muffler on that system, that's going to lead to the people that have are just going to keep getting more and more, and the people that don't have are just going to keep paying the price because it's a zero sum. So what do we do about that as a society? If we believe in democracy and Republican form of government, and we keep allowing the rich to get richer and the poor to get poorer, it's going to lead to instability, and our democracy is not going to work. Because tyranny is going to come into play, because some tyrant's going to come along and say, hey, I'll fix the situation. So I'm trying to cause some cognitive dissonance in your brain right now to try to get you to see where they're coming from, and maybe even for a second get you to think, wait, that doesn't sound so bad. What's wrong with Marxism then? If Marxism's goal is to achieve this utopia, shouldn't we be striving to make sure, by the way, Christians care about other people. Christians put others before themselves. Christians take care of the widows and the orphans. Christians use their means to take care of other people's needs. So what's wrong? What's wrong with seeking to get rid of private property? You have gall to think that you own part of God's creation, or somehow you're entitled to own a piece of God's creation. By the way, Christians, if I open this to the book right after the Gospels, it's called the Book of Acts. Didn't the original church practice communal living? So what's wrong? What's wrong with everybody taking care of everybody else? Wouldn't that be a really good? Can you imagine such a world? So anybody? What's wrong? Really? No, I'm not talking. You can have constitutional freedom, and at the same time, I'm trying to talk like a Marxist. You can have constitutional freedom. In fact, you can have democracy. In fact, democracy will work even better if we practice social democracy, where you combine this idea of socialism with democracy. The perfect world, actually, Drew, would be that we would have the Constitution in place and allow us the freedom to be able to take care of each other, so we can combine our constitutional freedom with our economic obligation to make sure everyone is taken care of. Because do you not agree, Christian, that one of the problems with human nature is greed and pride? Do we not agree as human beings that we have a sinful nature and we are prone to greed and selfishness and pride? So if we don't put government, we don't institute governments that are going to put the brakes on our greed, pride, and lust and selfishness for more, that it's going to create a society where you have the haves and the have-nots, and eventually that society is going to crumble because unrest will happen. We've learned in history when societies have a big gap between the rich and poor, that's when societies fall apart. That's why we talk about America over the last 240 years using the Constitution and using individual liberty, but also putting things in place in our system that create at least the illusion that everybody feels middle class. So what are they missing? Did you guys read Animal Farm with Mr. Lamb, what's the point of that book? Why is that little book, not a very big book, is it? How many pages? Maybe 100? Why is that little book, why has it been so influential? What was the point to Animal Farm? Yeah.
Everyone's
Okay, so the overwhelming statement that comes out of Animal Farm is all pigs are equal, but some pigs are more equal than others. What did Orwell and what do free market economists know about human nature? The Marxists will tell us that human nature is people tend to be greedy, selfish, right? And if the state, if government doesn't put things in place to stop them from being so greedy, they're just going to take advantage of everybody. Remember in U.S. history, we studied Rockefeller and J.P. Morgan and Carnegie, and the heading of the notes was, there was question mark. Are these people captains of industry, or are they, remember that phrase, 2 words? Robber barons. Right? Were these people good for society or bad? And we left it open-ended. Of course, the Marxist socialists would say that those people are bad, right? They're robber barons. They're using, by the way, once you start having someone own private property and now they've got the capital to continue to, quote, literally capitalize on their ownership of property, they're going to continue to use the capital they have to increase it because they're greedy. The Christian worldview says, yes, you're right. Human nature is to be selfish and greedy. But how do we mitigate it? Do we institute man-made institutions, government, to make people live communally, or how do we go about putting the brakes on our own sinful nature? Hello? How do I go about putting the brakes on my sinful nature? Because I will also tend to be selfish, greedy, prideful. What's the solution in the biblical or Christian worldview? Trey? He's always the answer. Right? Christ is always the answer. The Holy Spirit, that's why your prayer life is so important. That's why getting closer to God is so important. Because if you go unchecked, and the Holy Spirit's not, if God's not your check, you're no better than anybody else. Yeah.
Why is it that Thanksgiving is always on?
Why is that question asked right now?
Oh, sorry.
Well,
I take it back.
no, but why? I'm just seeing the connection.
I don't know. It just
Trying to
came to
get
my
your
mind. I thought you would have the answer.
Well, it's the fourth Thursday in Thanksgiving, or November. How they came up with that, I don't know.
That's it.
That's Thursday the day. Why is it a Thursday? I've never thought about it. Now I'm off track. What was my question? What's the difference so far? Oh, okay. What do we have in common so far? That we both realize that human nature is flawed. People tend to be greedy. However, to the Marxist point of view, since money and property will make someone greedy, the Marxist point of view wouldn't necessarily be that it's human nature that makes you greedy. The Marxist point of view would be that having the society kind of leads to you being greedy. So then society, or we the people, can stop each other from being greedy and achieve utopia. Marxism is often used interchangeably with communism. What is communism? It's the Marxist ideal. Karl Marx's ideal form of living was that from each, according to their means that stuff that I have, from whatever I have to offer to society, to whatever your need is. So, whether it be money or skill, I'm going to use my skill, the gifts that I have, to make sure that you all are taking care of your needs. And you will do likewise. You'll use whatever resources or skills and ability you have to take care of my needs. What is wrong with that? You seem like you want to say something, Cam. Is there anything wrong with that necessarily?
Yeah.
What?
I mean, we are faulty. And if they bring that to you, you can say, like, we are faulty, so why do we rely on each other when we can rely on God? And He's perfect.
Okay. But in brotherly, sisterly, in Christ, couldn't we rely on each other? Isn't that what I said at the beginning of the church? If you open up the book of Acts and read how they were living in the beginning, that they all agreed to share everything they had, right? We need to do this. We need to live in a way where we pool all our resources together and take care of each other, because it's us against the world, right? What would be wrong with us as a society always living like that? Animal farm. All pigs are equal. Some pigs are more equal than others. Good.
We would have the government doing that for us because we can't really do ourselves, so then
Right. In the book of Acts, they all voluntarily agreed to live like that. There are places like, sadly, what happened 3 weeks ago in Israel. If you've heard this word on the news, it's called a kibbutz. There are places in the world where people agree to live like this. They live communally because they voluntarily go into a situation where they're all going to take care of each other like that. There's nothing wrong with that. Emily says, because of our knowledge of human nature, in order to make Marxism or communism work, it's going to necessitate that the government makes you do it. Big difference between all of us in this room volunteering to take care of each other and some government authority making you do it. Yes, sir.
Everyone's just gonna lose their drive with their-
Right? Speaking of history, you also remember this, I hope. Going back to William Bradford, when we were setting up, this happened in Virginia and in Massachusetts. You know, we're all in this together, people. We're not going to be able to survive if we don't all work together. So we all have to volunteer to work together, right? So here they are. Remember, in the first winter, many of them died because it didn't work out so well. So they're all working together, sharing their abilities to plant and harvest, putting all the food in the storehouse. What happened? What happened? Why did they have to stop doing that? Because some people figured out, I can go to the storehouse and get food, and I don't have to put in the work. Because Trey's getting up and, hey, Trey's taking care of it. I'll just be lazy today. But I'm still going to feed my family. Because we know that about human nature. If you're not incentivized to work, okay, left to your own desires, what would you have done at 7:30 this morning? Take a bed? Hello?
Depends what.
Wouldn't, or play a game,
Depends what
right?
day it is.
Depends what day it is, but if you weren't
It's Monday.
incentivized. It's Monday. But the point is, if there's no incentive, human nature says that we're going to be like electricity, take the easy way out, right? Electricity's always.
Would you rather be a Walmart
Miss Blair would
bagger
probably like that one.
making $250,000 a year or work here?
Homework, bagger making $250 a year?
Or work here?
What I mean,
Wow. Do you think I would choose to be a Walmart bagger because it paid?
That's what I'm
I
asking.
won't say it. What's that?
That's what I'm asking.
So you think I would, my human nature would say I could be the Walmart bagger?
Yeah.
I think I would.
are you serious?
$250,000 a
Have
year.
you seen the people at Walmart?
Still $250,000.
That would be very
a year.
difficult.
I mean, if LeBron's
It's like one of those things that,
35 hours a week.
one of those theoretical things, like you say you would hope you would do A, but would you really, if you were in the situation?
35 hours a week, 250,000 a year. What are you doing?
Well, can I do that at night?
No.
I do that from 4 to.
It's one
He'd
of the
still
other.
be the lights out announcer and a baseball coach.
But you lose this job.
Okay, but I don't think I would. You
They're
think
putting
I'm
all the money.
lying? You
right
think I'm
there.
lying?
I do think we're lying.
Cash.
Okay, so what is your point to this question? That people, that incentive
Yeah.
is gonna make people behave a certain way, right? Okay, so the Marxists would say, that's true, so instead of someone making 250,000 and the other person making what I make, we need to get rid of that. We need to make it so everybody's equal. So I wouldn't have to make that choice. I would be able to just do what, with the gifts God's given me, to do what's best for society. I wouldn't have to make that choice. That's what
You
the,
went way too deep into that. You could have just.
the Marxists would say that I shouldn't have to make that choice. That the government will determine what I'm best at, and they'll put me in that position so that everybody else's needs could be met. And if you're gonna be a good doctor and you got those skills, well then that's what you'll be. And the difference in pay between the doctor and the Walmart bagger and the teacher shouldn't be that different. Because they're all just using what they have to fulfill everybody else's needs. But then what society would that create?
Wait,
There would be no incentive.
But would they all do without like student debt?
Free college.
Quote unquote free.
Yeah, but then you're not going to pass. You're going to pay nothing.
Oh, the goal, listen, these two phrases, communist utopia, classlessness, and statelessness. This is utopia. There are no upper class and lower class. Everybody's the same. Nobody's envious of anybody else. And stateless. So their goal is to be stateless, no need for government. The reality is, and why communism has never worked, is because it doesn't last very long. In the colonies, it didn't last very long. Everybody just all working together to take care of each other, singing Kumbaya. And very few people live in these things we call kibbutzes or other communals in the world, because people have a desire to achieve. And if you remember from economics class, Adam Smith, why capitalism, which is going to be the next, or 2 things down, next thing, why capitalism is so at odds with communism is because Adam Smith's idea of the invisible hand says that as we all work, by the way, according to our human nature, to be greedy, as we all work to pursue our best interest, that's the way we'll take care of everybody's needs. What's the best way to take care of everybody's needs? That I give what I have, even if it's very little? Or to incentivize me to want to make more, and then I'd be able to take care of everybody's needs greater. Like we showed at the beginning of the year about the equity thing, where they're trying to watch the game. And my man Brandon Tatum said, this is why capitalism is so beautiful, because those people that we envy and the communists and Marxists get mad at because they're rich and they think that their greed is taking advantage of other people, that's contrary. They're actually building companies which puts other people to work, right? Now the Marxists, I guess what the Marxist wants is for that person that has all the money and the property and the means to just evenly distribute it to everybody else. And then we go back to, if someone's giving you something, you have less incentive to try to achieve for yourself, because you'd rather be like, is your cat still alive? Well,
Yeah, unfortunately.
Oreo? Rolo. Why do I always say Oreo? Rolo, we'd all be like cats. Is that a better analogy, Landon, than electricity? that we just lay around, sleep, eat, do it again? What? Cats, 24 minutes. When you introduce competition and the drive for profit, profit's a bad word to a Marxist, to a communist, because that leads to people having more than others. But when you eliminate that, you eliminate people's desire to achieve, because that's part of human nature. We want to be rewarded for our hard work. Yeah.
So there's like no leader.
Well, in their
There's like one
utopia,
person.
we would all just, there wouldn't be a need for a government, state meaning government.
So there's not like a king or something.
You wouldn't need it. But the problem is, human nature and history show us that it's not possible
They're like police.
because of human nature, because Animal Farm. That's the point to it. When you say all animals or all pigs are equal, some pigs are more equal than others, the point to it is, no matter how much people try to tell you that they're going to create this world where everybody's the same and everybody's equal and nobody's better than anybody else, it's not ever going to happen, because we're humans. And someone's going to try to control other people. There's always going to be that desire to control. It's constant.
Power vacuum.
Right. Marxism, communism, socialism. Sometimes we use those words interchangeably. Here's the difference is Marxism is just a word because it was based on the writings of Karl Marx. Marx wanted this ideal state of communism. If you've ever wondered why people use socialism and communism as if they're synonyms, because they kind of are, but the big difference is socialism is the economic means to achieve communism. Socialism, Marxism, main concern is economics, which creates different classes of people, high class, low class, and that just shouldn't be. Because if everybody just used what they had to help everybody else, then we'd all have the same. Nobody would have a Lamborghini, but everybody would have a car. Nobody would live in a mansion, but everybody would have a house. Nobody would have whatever the best tennis shoes are, but everybody would have shoes. You wouldn't necessarily have the quote-unquote greatest heart surgeon or brain surgeon, but everybody would have at least health care. Because I guess, as Will said, what would incentivize someone to be a bagger at Walmart? Offer them $250,000 a year in today's market. Right. What would incentivize someone to be the best heart surgeon?
Bread.
Right. We would like to think that everybody goes into medicine because they've got this desire and compassion, which I'm sure plays a part, but they go into being the best heart surgeon or brain surgeon just because they've got such a desire and compassion in their heart to help other people. Wouldn't that be great? But we know that people in Canada, if they're about to have heart surgery, a large percentage of them will come to America to have the heart surgery at the Cleveland Clinic or other such place, because they know the people there are incentivized and they make more money, because that drives them to be the absolute best at whatever it is they're doing, because of human nature. And if you take those incentives away, people will not be motivated to be their best. So while in theory communism sounds good, we're going to create this perfect world where we're all taken care of, they don't understand human nature. We as Christians understand human nature, and therefore we don't buy into communism. And by the way, one of the first things that happens in a place that tries to institute communism or socialism is you've got to get rid of Remember we said at the end of the last chapter, the similarities with communism and secularism, Marxism and secularism, is they're anti-God, right? They're atheistic and materialistic, and they want to get rid of Christianity. The secularist wants to do it philosophically and convince you that you shouldn't be believing in anything that has to do with some afterlife. You should be concerned with the here and now. The Marxist reason for eradicating religion is because everybody has to buy into the idea that before we get to a stateless society, the state has to be instituted. The two, whatever the names was, Major, Napoleon, the pigs and animal farms, and so on. Those guys got to be in charge at first to institute it. And trust them. Once they get everything in place, then we'll all be equal again. Right. Kind of like the thing that you've probably seen before. If you show the satellite view of North Korea, you'll see one dot. In the dead of night, you'll see one dot of light where the dictator lives, and everybody else has to ration all the electrical power and the food. But that's okay, he's doing it for your good. He's doing it to make sure that you're all taken care of. Right. While he lives in his palace. Because that's the only way you can make communism work. Because so goes against human nature. So Adam Smith's idea was, hey, human nature is to be greedy. Guess what? Everybody, allow them to use their pursuit of profit, and by being the best they can be, they'll make the society better, because they'll hire people, more people have jobs, more people will be incentivized to be what they are. Hey, look at go to America, where the incentives are all in place to be the best you can be and be rewarded for it. Introduction to Marxism. Good. Good Monday morning.